issues, blah, 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 blah. Like that was objective evidence that led to legislation. It wasn't someone saying, I don't like cigarettes or I don't like like tobacco that led to, that's what I'm saying. Like we should be legislating based on research instead of
Yeah, but
how people are like.
I understand the process and I agree and I accept that that's the process, but it's still informed by a person's morality. The fact that you should do no harm, for example, to others.
Well, that's the purpose of a government.
Yeah, but it still just boils down to force. And that's why I have a problem with feminism intrinsically, because in my head, I don't see that it makes sense, especially since men enforce it, but yet women want equality, but they could never enforce it as a monopoly. So it's almost like men are, so the case is that men grant permissions or privileges to women. And the only way women can have any right is if a man enforces it. So you could never be equal to him.
But that's just the way that like the society was built. Because I feel like you would understand that that's an unacceptable argument if, 200 years ago we were having this discussion about slavery, that
Yes,
Black
but
people
no, that's
never
different though.
inherently be equals because it's white people who are in power of their government who are awarding these rights to these
The
slaves.
difference is the men on one
There's no
side.
difference.
Well, I could make the case. The men on one side could overthrow the men on the other, and that's always been the historical observation: is men vie for power, rights over the other. Some win, some lose, but women
That's
don't
also
do
not
that
true.
against men.
Because pre-agricultural revolution, we saw especially that we had a lot of matriarchal societies and a lot of egalitarian societies.
Okay.
Just having brute strength does not quantify you as like a more valuable or stronger individual.
Okay, so let's say I grant this point, right? So now the 4B movement is even more powerful because women are denying men the reproductive right to create more men. In that way, you have made the 4B movement even more powerful because they're taking the agency back. Because
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because if your argument hinges on the fact that men are have this forceful power, women in a sense are negating that by saying, no, we do not want to interact with that. We don't want to interact with the system. We're going to remove ourselves from this equation and take this autonomy back to ourselves.
The problem is, in order for them to get anything, they have to ask permission from men. And if at any time men said no, there would be nothing women could do about it.
Again, this does not, you have not given any like actual differentiation between this and what happened with like slavery.
Because the men can collectively get together and overthrow whatever government another man does, but women cannot do that. Women cannot overthrow men, and historically, I'd never play. I haven't seen it play out. So I'm not saying it can't. I'm not saying it doesn't logically follow. It's plausible, I suppose, but could you provide any evidence to the contrary where a woman place has overthrown a man's place, like a government?
I mean, first off, just because you haven't seen something historically does not mean that it is something that is not plausible. It's been a while since I took world history, right? But like, again, there's been multiple histories of societies that are like matriarchal and or that are much more egalitarian compared to like what we see today. And like, I don't understand where you're necessitating this idea because like, obviously, like, sure, like men physically are like stronger than women on average, right? But that doesn't then mean that they are able to like bend this entire group of people to their will, because especially in like a technologically advanced society where women have made a significant amount of contributions to that, I think, and especially when, even warfare today is not predominantly done like soldier to soldier in trenches like our previous world wars were, a lot of that has to do with like nuclear power.
All right, so
and
two points. The first one, I kind of forgot. What was the first one? The first point?
There has been historical precedents for women-led societies.
Right. So just because you have a matriarchy and you run like the family unit where the mother has like preeminence, that doesn't
Well, I
mean
didn't
that.
say like a
Well,
family unit. I mean like
well, if I could
these
just finish
women.
my point real quick, like
Well, I'm just clarifying what I said
well, I
because I
didn't even
didn't
get to
say
finish
these
like my
households.
statement. But go ahead.
But you misinterpreted what I said.
But you didn't even
When
get
I
to
say
let me
like
finish my statement yet.
matriarchal society. Okay, go on.
Like I understand like there'd be a matriarchy where like let's just say like from a mother matriarchy like in the family unit to even like Nefertiti, right? But behind most governments that I've observed, it's men who will fight and die. It's not women. So the enforcement arm of any right is granted by
Because
men.
women were not allowed to enlist in the military.
I mean, women are allowed now, and they still don't.
Now,
We basically have to, like, they take up maybe like 17% of the military currently, and that's not accounting for like that's not just combat roles. It's like administrative and whatnot. But it's not like I'm making like a bold claim there. This is an observational reality and a historical one. So I think it's up for you to have you. If you're gonna say if you're gonna argue the contrary, the burden of proof is on you.
well, like, the thing I would say is that like who is involved in the military is not representative of who leads a society. And furthermore, like I think you're being a little like in bad faith because like when it comes to systems that have had historical issues with allowing people to be involved with them, obviously that's going to have like later repercussions in a society where they still have barred access into this area and it's more difficult for them to get into it. The
But
fact
we are
that
the
women
most. I'm
aren't
not being
well
bad faith.
represented in the military can also be contributed to the fact that historically we were not welcome there. For example, like a lot of women might not want to join the military on any grounds because we see increased rates of sexual assault. Like obviously that's not a welcoming environment to women. So why would we involve ourselves with it anyways?
So I wouldn't say I'm being bad faith by making like just obvious observations about reality. Okay, so because women were not allowed to, if women are the most free that they've ever been, yet they're still not a representative majority or half in the military, it's kind of like women don't want to be oil rig workers. They don't want to be sewage, like they don't want to take any infrastructure jobs when there's oftentimes programs that incentivize them to do so. So it's like women don't want to particularly do any hard work that holds up society. I mean, I'm not speaking like all women, but yet you're saying women can basically do it if they wanted to, and
Well, I'm
therefore
saying
they can enforce rights like men can. Is that what you're trying to argue?
no, I'm saying that like just pointing out the statistic that like women are not dominant in XYZ field is not cognizant to the fact that like it might not be that women just don't want to do these things, but there are other like hurdles and issues with these male dominated fields that makes them not want to enter these fields. Like I brought up with the military, we see ridiculously like disproportionate increases in sexual assault rates. And like me, I like would not feel welcome in that environment where I'm much more likely to be assaulted and thus just not end up joining the military. And like as an engineer, I can speak on like I'm in a very male dominated field. None of my professors are women. Um and like one consistent issue that we've had like with our department, we had one female professor, she left 2 years ago cuz she went to Berkeley. She won a national research award related to like what is it called? Like making artificial organs through like tumor cell use. It's a whole thing. But she won a national award for it and then got an offer at Berkeley. And our head of the department at that time, who was a man, and every other professor was a man except for her, told her in a board meeting that the only reason she won that award was because she was a woman. Like, obviously, when it's like you're in an aggressive and an isolating environment like that, it wouldn't make me want to be an engineer either. I wouldn't want to be a part of that either, even though obviously her work was well renowned and she was very interested in these things and like an award for it. Like, dealing with that every day, all the time, is tiring.
Okay, so your anecdotal claim, I mean, it could just be the exception to the rule. I'm not trying to be mean. We can just throw that out, because like your personal experience about it is one thing, or the story you're observing, it could just be an exception, couldn't it?
Well, I mean, when we see rates,
I'm just asking, could it or could it not be?
like
Yes or no?
male-dominated fields.
Okay, think about it this way: one anecdote in a group.
I mean, I'm just asking for an answer to the question.
I'm answering your question now. Okay, so we cannot.
So it can't just be yes or no.
I also would like to point out that I first brought up something that is a statistical fact.
Okay, so it's a statistic. Okay, so if I grant you that it's a statistical fact that women are assaulted in the military, they're going to pass the law that men are going to enforce. Agreed? Do you guys agree?
Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now.
Enforced by the
government. You don't need to pull it up. I can grant it. You don't. I'm not going to dispute the evidence. I'll grant it.
Okay, again, this has to be enforced by the government. The government shouldn't be seen as male or female dominated.
But that's what it is. The majority of polices are men. The majority of militaries are men. The majority of the enforcement arm of the government is men. Is that not the case?
This is why we need feminism then.
But can you at least answer the question?
I can agree with you that these are like male-dominated fields, and this is why we still need feminism today to bring more equity to these fields.
But this still doesn't. It still doesn't get around the main thing that I'm arguing is that in order for women to get this equality that they desire, you have to appeal to what you guys call the patriarchy to give it to you. But if I have to give you power because you cannot fight for it yourself, you're not equal.
Hey man, I don't think we're gonna ever see eye to eye on this one.
Well, can you dispute the argument, or you just?
I dispute it. You know, at my core, that we are not equal.
Wait. You agree that we're not equal?
There's no inherent characteristic between the sexes that makes one more or less valuable than the other.
Wait. Maybe you guys are saying two separate things. So the man, I'm not sure who the man is. You're saying we're not equal?
I'm saying that we should be seen as equal. We are equal, but I don't.
Just because a power structure like creates a system where one person has no power does not then mean that they are unequal because we developed a government around that system.
But it's not just the government.
Well,
like if there's no well, you guys are giving two different claims. Come on, it's 2v1. All right, you guys are tag teaming me. Can I get a little bit more airtime? Just a little bit? No? Yes?
I'm still speaking. Anyways.
That's crazy. So you guys are gonna double team me, and I can't address point for point. It's like you guys get to go in and out, and I can't. You don't think that's a bit unreasonable?
I was in the middle of a point, and you interrupted me, bruh.
I mean, it's just hard to hear what he's saying and then what you're saying, and then I have to like. Do you get what I mean? At least can you see where I'm coming from?
Okay. Go on.
No, I in courtesy, I'll let you finish the point. It's just hard to address both. So go ahead.
I already forgot. Go on.
Well, I'm sorry to I forgot now. Okay. So what he was talking about was he says women should be equal because we have a system that can basically make that happen.
No, we do not have a system that can make that happen. We are working towards a system in which we are seen as equals.
But that's the system. The system is literally making it happen from its inception. You have a wasn't it like less than 10% of women voted for suffrage or something like that? A lot of women didn't even want it. So then you guys still got it.
Back when this was happening, a lot of women were so discouraged to even vote. A lot of women weren't even heard, and a lot of these voices were just glazed over.
Yeah, but that's not the full story. A lot of women didn't want the civil responsibility that came with voting. So all I'm arguing is that it was granted the power disparity that you guys are arguing about was granted to you by the patriarchy itself.
The slaves were freed by white men. Like there's no difference between like what I was trying to say earlier is that like just because a system is initiated under this pretense that people are not equal, because even if the system eventually was able to rectify that, quote unquote, which is what we're trying to continue to have it do, is that when the society was initially created, that wasn't true, because like women couldn't own property.
Okay, so
like black men were not free to do what they wanted to do. So, like people who were gay, like because of sodomy laws, could be persecuted and thrown in jail.
All right, so the men can overthrow slavery and the slaves can overthrow the slaver, and it happened almost temporally parallel in Haiti. The minority or the men in the country did just that. So this is once again an example of male overtaking a male, but there's never been women overtaking male. That was my point.
If you're talking about in a violent manner, and obviously I can't say for sure because like I took world history a while ago. If you're talking about a violent manner, then sure.
But
I can't think of any historical instance where like women violently initiated some type of like past like an individual level to force some type of change, quote unquote.
But that is the only way you can enforce any right. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Okay, so if you agree with that, a monopoly on force is the only way to enforce a right.
I don't agree with that.
Oh, you don't agree with that?
No.
But what are rights but your ability to enforce them? For example, you do not have a right to life in front of a tiger. You do not have a right to life in front of a criminal that's attacking you. These are just social constructs. You agree with that?
I mean, yeah. Because this is like a philosophical argument, yeah.
Then what? Then how else? I mean, how else can you enforce a right? Because if nobody wants to, if people say no, it's up to the state to put that weapon to your head to force you to do it. How else can it be done?
You have to change, like as we were talking about, societal norms of a society to have these things enshrined within a society as the norm. That's why we must have these conversations so we can discuss these topics, debate these topics, and help others see that, you know, equity is a good thing. Women's rights are a good thing.
So basically you're saying we have to make sure we persuade people to be at the helm of the state.
In any argument you have to persuade the other side. You're never going to escape that. If there's two people in a void and they talk to each other, they're going to have to persuade each other. That's just how language works. And at this point,
okay, but do you agree that you can't argue with somebody who's just going to use force against you? Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, but why would you need to use force if you could just talk things out like this?
Because it's a social construct in the sense of the right. You're only allowed to have rights because someone is willing to beat somebody else up on your behalf. So you're still not able to run away from that fundamental
well, because also
premise.
one thing I brought up before is that, like, when we talk about warfare, especially like more recently, is that it's not about like a soldier to soldier stance, right? Like, women have made multiple contributions when it comes to the development of like artillery, bombs, so on and so forth, and artificial intelligence, which is likely what most warfare like today would look like. We're not at a point where we're like throwing fists at each other. We're like throwing bombs at each other, which women have obviously made contributions to.
I do not
Like,
argue
it's silly to
like
say that like women cannot inherently defend themselves, even like from a violence quote unquote perspective, because today we don't use hand to hand combat anymore.
all right, well that's 2 points. I guess 1.5, but to go to the first one, like, sure, there are drone programs. There's female medics. There might even be some that do other things, but like when it comes to the artillery, the machinery, the upkeep, the infrastructure behind that, that is a male-dominated thing. So to even maintain it, it would still require men. So if men just said all together, no, you can't do anything about it. If the men said, we're not gonna help you, support you with your tanks, we're not going to support you with getting the heavy equipment, it's not going to happen. Or it's not going to happen as efficiently as if it's against men on the other side. And to your other point, I'm sorry, I need to write it down. You're saying like hand-to-hand combat is not really a thing. I mean, if a lot of wars are fought not just in the air but on land. It's a mainstay of most military conquests. You have to secure land. You need the males, or you need the soldiers to go and clear, extract, etc. So, and you're going to come across other opponents in that theater. This is a pillar of warfare. You're right. It's not like trench warfare because technology has advanced, but it's still boots on the ground. You have many branches that do that. And once again, these are all men. There's no Navy SEAL there's no Navy SEAL ever that's been a woman. To give credence to the fact that men tend to do this job more efficiently. So if it was men against women, the woman would lose. So once again, this goes back to the thing of men have the monopoly on force. Let's see. Maybe they left. Maybe they're brainstorming. Let's see. We don't need permission to be free of your regulating our values and behavior. Yeah, I'm arguing you definitely need permission, because if men said no, women would go back to whatever, they would just have to retreat if men just said no collectively. Let's see. Can I join? Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, well, I guess this is the end of the argument. Well, I'm not sure if anybody could hear me but it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on. You guys have a good rest of your day.